Feel like sometimes the enemy is just faster than you? Well, strap in, slowpokes, because I got all the movement tricks you'll ever need. Kangas wrote that joke. What's going on, ProGuides fam? I'm Tia, and today we're talking about the 4 levels of movement in Valorant. Similar to our 4 levels of opping video, check it out if you haven't already, we'll be starting off at level 1 and show you all the steps you need to take to get to the next level. Regardless of where you are in terms of your movement proficiency right now, there is something for everyone in today's video. Let's hop in.
What many of you guys might not be aware of is that having solid movement is one of the biggest telltale signs if a player is good or not. Record some of your own gameplay and watch your movement and compare it to your favorite pro players. You will most likely find that the way they move around or the movement mechanics they implement are missing from your own gameplay. I know this to be the case as I have personally done this many times in the past. I used to be heavily convinced that shooters mainly required raw aim. I spent countless hours trying to perfect my aim, when in reality, your movement is just as important. The easiest way I can put this is this. When you're in a duel, it's not just you trying to kill your opponent. They are also trying to kill you too. Well, duh, you might think. But you'd be surprised on why these pro players can win their duels more often. And one of those aspects that helps is their impeccable movement. One of the best examples I can give is Sinatra, Dapper, and Tens. Not only are their movement fundamentals solid, but they showcase specific techniques that others are still catching up on. Overall, great movement will put you in better situations, keep you alive longer, and it can help you aim better. Instead of relying on just your mouse movement alone, your movement does impact the crosshair positioning as your agent moves. You might be surprised that there are plenty of players that use their movement keys to make big crosshair adjustments instead of using their mouse to do so. Alright, you know what time it is. It's the question of the day. We want to know, how do you guys feel about the movement accuracy penalties that were implemented in 2.02? Personally, I love the direction that this patch is suggesting. I've been saying that the movement accuracy is far too accurate for a tactical game like Valorant. However, I haven't noticed a huge difference with this change, but it's definitely there. I'm just excited to see them do something similar to the other automatic weapons. Overall, it's a great patch in my opinion, but we want to know what you guys think. Let us know in the comments down below. For those of you that haven't bound your jump bind to either mouse scroll wheel up or down, please do this immediately. This movement bind alone will help you in many ways that can probably take a whole video to discuss. However, I want to mainly talk about its use to get space early in the round. To highlight how this works, I'll show you how you can freely get into certain positions unless your opponent uses something like a jet dash or race satchel to punish you. For example, on the start of the round on the attacker side of Haven, you can B-hop over this box and get close to the front door of Garage. This is especially useful if you're playing someone like Sova, as you're in a prime position to drone down Garage or B site. It doesn't just stop with Sova. Many other agents like Phoenix, Reyna, and Raze love to be in this type of positioning. Situations like this are much more difficult to replicate if you don't know how to B-hop. Overall, B-hopping can get you out of sticky situations, help you take early space like I've mentioned, and even get you places in complete silence. I can't tell you how many Brimstone ults I've survived because of this or headshots I've avoided because I was B-hopping around instead of running. It's a simple mechanic and a core fundamental part of Valorant, so learn it if you haven't already. And those of you who want to learn about silent B-hopping, go book a session on ProGuides and chat it up with one of our coaches. They'd be glad to show you the neat practical spots where this can work. Any of you who are familiar with tactical shooters like Counter-Strike will immediately recognize this movement mechanic. What we're talking about here is counter-strafing, which is the building block to all movement as it lets you accurately place shots at range while still staying relatively mobile. You can get away with not understanding this mechanic, but I promise you that it's much harder to climb if you don't have counter-strafing down. Although it's not a particularly mechanical difficult skill, it will take many hours to learn until it becomes a natural part of your muscle memory. Okay, let's talk about it in more detail. Basically, whenever you counter-strafe, you are stopping the momentum of your movement with the opposite movement input. So if you're holding moving to the right or holding D, you input left or the A key to stop your momentum. This makes it much more fluid to choose when you stop your movement, and it gives you the option to change directions easier. Valorant is designed where if you let go of your movement keys, it will stop moving very quickly, unlike how Counter-Strike works. However, it's slower to let go of your keys entirely instead of inputting a different movement. On top of this, it gives you the option to keep moving. So for example, instead of holding D and letting go of D to stop my movement, I'll hold the D key and press A to halt my movement. This can also lead me to do additional inputs, like hold the A key and press the D key to stop my movement. Notice how there isn't as much delay in between me stopping and starting as I'm not fully letting go of my keys. Now I'll show you a little bit of what counter-strafing might look like. Watch how I can stop my movement, take a shot, and quickly pivot to a different direction and repeat that process. The movement part is one thing, the next step is learning that timing when you halt your movement with a counter-strafe. During that halt of movement, you have a time period where you can get 1 to 2 accurate shots down, more if you're counter-strafing at a slower pace. Basically right after you input that counter movement input. So if you're going right with the D key and you hit the A key, press left click. If you get the timing right and you master this movement, you will become a menace at those medium to long range fights. Opponents that panic will attempt to crouch spray you or just stand still entirely. Meanwhile, you'll be moving side to side and seemingly shooting them while moving. So counter-strafing is a great tool for when you're typically holding and ready for a fight. Now let's talk about wide swinging and why this simple movement is largely misunderstood. Okay, so the main reason you want a wide swing is to throw off an opponent's crosshair placement. This is especially great if you suspect that an enemy is holding the angle that you're going to peek. Instead of peeking it close where most players will have their crosshair ready, you will continue to swing or move past that position. That player holding you ready for your peek will now have to adjust his crosshair to follow you. Couple this with a well-timed counter-strafe when you're ready to take your shot, and it will seem like you're sprinting across the screen and killing him instantly. Besides making you a harder target to hit, this gives you time as you're swinging to better adjust your crosshair to be more in line with your opponent's head. This type of movement isn't always foolproof. For example, if the enemy is expecting a wide swing, you won't have much of an advantage. Additionally, if the enemy is swinging you instead of holding, you won't be in much of an advantage as well. If you want to spice up your swings even more, you can input your crouch movement towards the end of your swing. This forces your opponent to readjust their crosshair again as they will most likely be following your swing at head level. Unless they predict you to crouch right away, this can spell disaster for them. With that said, the main thing to remember when wide swinging is to have an idea of where your opponent might be. You shouldn't be wide swinging every angle known to man, but using it to make proactive guesses. An example of this can be shown on Bind B Long. I'll first always check the angle towards the teleport from farther away, come closer, and get ready to swing this direct angle ahead. If you don't clear that initial angle on the left, you will be swinging into multiple angles, which makes your crosshair placement more difficult. Remember, you want a wide swing when you're pretty sure someone is waiting for you and you've isolated that opponent down. Otherwise, you'll be swinging into multiple angles or crossfires and be shot before you have a chance to do anything. Enough chit chat, let's end this guide with jump spotting. If you've been keeping up with some of my previous guides, I've already mentioned how important jump spotting can be. Today we'll be talking about how to use it in an advanced way. I don't expect any of you guys to know how to do this on your first try, but boy is this a useful movement mechanic. I first learned how to do this the easy way, but after watching some players do this trick, it's been a blessing in many situations. Before we get into the nitty-gritty details of how to do it, let's reiterate on why it's so impactful. When done correctly, jump spotting will give you information on where an enemy may be without you having to hard peek at it at that moment. This is especially useful for trying to weed out a defensive opper or by checking if enemies are pushing up without exposing too much of your body for too long. Also, if you're out of utility to help you safely peek an enemy, this is a great alternative, or good if you want to save your utility for later. This will be fairly difficult to explain, but I'll try my best. Essentially, you're holding W first jumping, and holding D and looking slightly to the right. Next, you let go of the W and D key and look left while holding the S and A key. The series of inputs is just reversed if you're trying to jump spot from the left. Feel free to pause or rewind this part of the video. This mechanic took me a while to learn, so it's perfectly fine if it takes you a while to learn as well. Watch how I do it to spot if enemies are holding A short on bind. I hold W, jump while looking slightly to the right and pressing D. I let go of W and D and now look left as I hold down the A and S key. Remember, this can be done from the left as well, you just have to reverse the movement keys to match that instead. You don't need to see them necessarily, as the minimap will pick them up if they are there. On top of that, players who aren't ready for this type of movement will usually shoot out of instinct, which is information in itself. At any point of these levels you feel stuck or aren't exactly sure how to do those mechanics, again, feel free to try out any of our coaches on ProGuides. They are all seasoned Valorant players who would love to help you progress your skill to the next level.
Now that you guys know about the ins and outs of the movement in Valorant, there isn't much left to do but start playing. Make sure you're trying to progress gradually from level 1 through 4 while using this video as a guideline. Regardless of what level you may be at, there's always more to improve on, which is so exciting or kind of sad. We hope you stuck with us to the end of this video, and if you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, ring the bell so you don't miss out on future uploads. Peace out, ProGuides fam. We'll see you in the next one. Also, Kanga's wearing a Pikachu shirt, but like Pikachu shirt, which means the joke in the beginning, Slowpoke. Anyway, just like simp for him in the comments down below.